Hello, BookTube. Hi, it's a small mail haul today. At first, I thought that it had something to do with the heat in Boston, but the heat hasn't been all that bad. And then I remembered that the street is a war zone. The street is being torn up by crews entirely composed of high school dropouts who are using hydraulic equipment to unearth gas mains. I wouldn't want to deliver mail here either. So maybe that explains there are only 3 packages, but that's enough. That's enough to get us going. Uh, and besides, we wouldn't want to obtain any kind of new books in our possession and not film it. Right, BookTube? All right, so what is this first one? We'll do this first one. We've only got 3. Oh, oh wow! It's another book from the New York Review of Books press. Well, so I think I really did. I think I really did get on their radar when I was making a fuss about Elizabeth Hardwick. Interesting. Okay, I'm happy to be on their list. Uh, so this is a thing called Other Men's Daughters by Richard Stern. It's got an introduction by Philip Roth and an afterword by Wendy Doniger. It's kind of a nice looking book. Uh, Dr. Robert Merriweather teaches at Harvard in the late 1960s. A thoughtful creature of habit, he spends much of his time observing the behavior of the young adults he is surrounded by, wryly noting how the decades seem to have brought with it wave after wave of assaults on American propriety and convention, concentrated, as always, on the university campus. Married for years, he thinks he understands the change that the new era has brought, especially regarding sexual mores to women in particular. He sounds like a bunch of fun, doesn't he? It sounds like just a fantastic novel. Uh, okay, well, the author died in 2013 and was the author of more than 20 books of fiction and nonfiction. The best known, according to this blurb, was this one, Other Men's Daughters. Uh, he taught literature and creative writing at the University of Chicago from 1955 until he retired in 2001. Uh, Okay, well, then he has a whole generation of American workshop students to account for. We'll see how it holds up in his book. Then we'll move on to this one here. I think it's absolutely ironic that after all these years of wanting to be on the NYRB's mailing list, now that I appear to finally be on that list, all I'm getting is fiction. But they do nonfiction. Some of it's very good. So, all right. This is the finished copy of Safe by Ryan Gaddis. It's a heist and a crime novel, I believe. It's the pub sheet is entirely covered in blurbs, entirely covered in blurbs. So it might maybe I want to tell us that when it's coming out. Yeah, it's coming out on August 1st. We're gonna have to turn to the book itself for any kind of understanding of it. Ricky Mendoza Jr. is trying to be good, but it's not easy in Los Angeles. In recovery and working as a freelance safecracker for the DEA, the FBI, or any other government agency willing to pay him, he's determined to live clean for the rest of his days. He might have, too, if the most important person in his life hadn't gotten into serious financial trouble. To fix it, all he has to do is crack a safe and steal drug money from under the noses of the gangs and the feds without getting caught or killed. Okay, so it is a heist. It is a heist novel. And it begins like this. I am on First Street, eyes up but slouching down, parked across from the Rancho San Pedro projects at the absolute end of Los Angeles. Not for the first time today, I'm thinking that if I get into this safe and they leave me alone while I'm doing it, I'm taking the money. Not all of it, I'm not stupid, just some. Okay. Okay, great. Well, I confess, heist novels, crime novels, tend to make me yearn for the nearest 900-page Windsor biography. But this might be different. You never know. Ryan Gaddis is the author of Kung Fu High School, and most recently All Involved, a novel about the 1992 LA riots. and he lives in Los Angeles, and he has shaved his head, and he lives in a place where the mean average daily temperature is 117 degrees, but he's wearing a sweater. And also, we can all quote from my sainted ma, you have a book published, it would kill you to smile. But you never know. The book could be really good. And I think I got an advance copy of this and just ignored it. So now I feel bad about that. But we've got one package left. So we've had an old novel and now a new novel. Let's see what this next one is. This is our last one for today. Oh, it's two things. Okay. All right. Okay, so... oh, all right. So these are two things from One World Publishing, and who do good stuff. They do good stuff. They they don't seem to get reviewed as often as I would think they would. But I know one of their books for sure that I will be reviewing for Open Letters Monthly for the main feature of the Year with the Tutors 2. One of theirs coming up. So let's see what we have here. The first one is A.C. Grayling, Democracy and Its Crisis. And let's see here. It's with the advent of authoritarian leaders and the simultaneous rise of populism, representative democracy appears to be caught between a rock and a hard place. Yet it is this space that it must occupy, says A.C. Grayling, if a civilized society that looks after all its people is to flourish. In a series of short, incisive chapters, he considers moments in history in which the challenges we face today were first encountered, how they were overcome or not, and with what consequences. He then lays bare the specific problems of democracy in the 21st century and maps out a set of urgently needed solutions. Okay, A.C. Grayling being a public intellectual of some note in the UK. Let's see here. So this is due in October. He was involved a little laterally and a little on the fringes of the new atheist movement when it was at its height, and is a sometimes interesting thinker. He's done a couple of books that I've really, really enjoyed. Some of his others seem a little phoned in. They seem like the kind of collection of woolly platitudes that is meant to impress graduate students who are expected to act impressed. So I don't know. He varies. He fluctuates, I guess, the way all public intellectuals do. Between gas and solid. But well, I'll certainly give this a try. A little bit dreading the idea that he's going to take a daunish walk through history. That never turns out well. But the next one is it's a book by Stanley Johnson. Who is the father of the London mayor, Boris Johnson. And this is a novel with a title that has recently come into use again, kompromat, which was a term from the Soviet Union meaning they have something on you and they're not going to use it because they want to use you. It's recently come back into currency because it is obviously the reality of the United States, of the current administration of the United States. There's the speculation that happened in some quarters of the country during the summer, during the campaign, and the scattered reportage from later than that has now become documented fact. And it's only going to get worse. Those documents are only going to get worse and split the country in two, between people who are living in one reality and people who are living in another reality, just choosing not to see each other's reality. Like China Miéville's The City and the City. That novel's been on my mind for the last year. Because there's in the setup of that novel, there's nothing to stop the citizens of the two sides of the city from seeing each other, even though it's a crime for them to do so. There's nothing actually to stop them from doing that. They are making a conscious decision to live in two completely separate realities. It used to be a big deal in the heady days of the Soviet Union. It used to be a big deal, the idea that someone was kompromat. But let's see what we have here. This is a brilliant satirical thriller that leaves the reader wondering whether this fake narrative might not just possibly be true. Stanley Johnson's sweeping satire follows the intertwined fortunes of the leader of British Leave campaign, former cabinet member Edward Barnard, and brash showman U.S. presidential candidate Ronald Craig. What was the true story behind Ronald Craig's unexpected triumph in the U.S. election? What was the real reason, for example, Britain's Prime Minister Jeremy Hartley included a commitment to hold on to in and out referendum on Europe in the Conservative 2015 election manifesto? This novel reveals how the devilishly cunning machinations of the Russian President Igor Popov, this is just killing me, succeed in crucially influencing the electoral outcome on both sides of the Atlantic. Plot, counterplot, and subplot are deftly woven into an alternative account of events, which ends as Britain's new Prime Minister, Mrs. Mabel Killick, seeks her own mandate to deal with the Brexit-related turbulence. Stanley Johnson is a former member of the European Parliament and father of Foreign Secretary and former London Mayor Boris Johnson. Oh, and he's written other thrillers. How did I not know that? This thing had to have been sent straight from his laptop to his publisher's printer. It had to have been. There can't have been any kind of turnaround here. That cannot possibly lead to a good novel, but it might make for a very interesting one. So this comes out in mid-October by Boris Johnson's father. I can tell you. Okay. All right. Do we have a picture of? Yes, there he is. Okay. I keep thinking about a British talk show that was aired years and years ago. The Christopher Hitchens was on the panel, and so was Boris Johnson and a bunch of other people. And a question from the audience came up: should Salman Rushdie have received a knighthood? And Hitchens, of course, leapt straight onto his high horse about how this is vicious censorship and racism, and how dare you, and et cetera, et cetera. And there were a couple of government flacks who said, it seems like a poorly timed gesture. It probably wasn't wise to do, and that doesn't reflect on Rushdie's literary ability at all. And on the question was going on, and when it rolled around to Boris Johnson, it's just this classic Bertie Wooster style oath where he says, "I don't see why they didn't give it to Dick Francis, rattling good yarns." He didn't get the whole point at all. Writers are just writers. Why not give one to somebody? Give one to somebody that everybody likes. It was almost endearing until you realize the guy has power. So anyway, we have Compromat, and we have A.C. Grayling, and we have Safe. So this is fiction heavy. You know that your nonfiction pickings are kind of lean when A.C. Grayling is your only savior, and then Other Man's Daughters. This is the kind of tweedy, leather elbow patched academic fiction that the person picking the titles for NYRB they seem to love. They've left not a single example of it unreprinted. A little of it goes a long way, but I don't recall ever having read this novel, so I will actually give it a try before I will anything else on this pile. So that's it for now, and I'll see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.